Here goes. Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest this week on Tuesdays with Tim. We are going to talk about General Conference, how fun it was, how much extra sleep we got sometimes. And I don't know if anybody's families ever did a vacation because they didn't have to go to church or whatever, but we will see what happens. We have Megan Connor in the house and Randy Watts, and we're in the living room of Tim, except for driving his car in the living room is Rob T. And so
no cars in the living room, Rob.
I'm stopped. I'm not moving.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just sort of get the vibe. General Conference is in, I guess, a week after this coming weekend, so a week and a half from now. And for a lot of ex-Mormons, it becomes something that we all pay attention to because we want to hear what types of song and dance they're talking about, right? And so, but we also have memories. I think my mom was in love with Marion D. Hanks. He was her seminary teacher, so she had googly eyes for him as a young, married man probably. But every time he came on, we had to listen no matter what. And then there were fiery talks by Lila Tooler's dad, Hartman Rector Jr., and now we know how toxic those actually were, those fiery talks. And so anyway, Tim, what's your first recollection of General Conference?
April 1973, when I went up and got a hotel room at the Travel Lodge down the street, and I attended all of conference in Temple Square. My first time attending all the sessions right before mission. My bishop drove me up there. Yeah, that was my first. Yeah, we didn't watch it much growing up. It was a weekend to go flying or something.
It was just before your mission?
Just before my mission. No, just like 4 months before I went in the mission home in August of 73. So I went, they took me up, dropped me off at the hotel, and I walked up to conference and listened to all the sessions. That was my first experience of attending live. And I don't remember as a kid ever watching it on TV. So, yeah. And even after that, it wasn't until I moved to Utah, I was at BYU, that I watched it on TV. I just didn't care. Oh, well, on my mission, we listened to it a couple of times. Yeah. They'd have the German session first, and then they had the English session. It was a delay. They did the, I think they did the German first and then the English. It was pre-recorded from like the night or the day before. We only got one session. I think it was Sunday morning.
So, Tim, were they talking about the stone cut out of the mountain without hands back then?
Yeah.
The growth of the church was important. I remember the conference membership report every April. We would hear how the church was growing and how that meant the church was true.
I remember the 150th. What was that, 1980? Yeah. Was it 80? Had to be. Listening with a friend, or he wanted to go. Yeah. My recollections are not that great. I always did go to priesthood meeting, though, usually. Yeah. I remember Paul Dunn's baseball stories, and I always wished they talk about pilots, because I didn't care about sports that much. But Grand Richards was always fun to listen to.
I'm pretty sure I remember when Leonard Arrington was called to be the church historian, because I think I was old enough to start to be interested in history, and then it was kind of cool that our church had a historian. Do you remember that?
No, I don't. No, I don't remember that. Like I said, growing up, we'd go flying that weekend or something else. Just like state conference, it wasn't a big deal in our family. The only time I went to state conference was when I made an elder. May have been more than that, but we went a couple of times, but it wasn't that often because it's such a pain in the butt. Because when we were little kids, they'd have remember they used to have primary during state conference, and then
Did they?
yeah, they had something for the kids at the Wilshire Stake Center in West LA. They'd have and then when you got old, I only went a few times. We didn't go that much. I became more devout right before my mission. I had to make sure to go. But I remember when Oaks and Nelson were called. So I was at BYU when that happened. Oh, and the controversy over Pullman's talk. Remember that?
Yeah, so his talk was about that you didn't really need a church, that all you needed was like you and God, sort of, and the church was supposed to help you get there. And then he had to re-record his talk and say, nope, the church is only about you just going to church.
Yeah, a friend of
I
mine.
agreed with that original talk.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. Friend
Too
of mine got hold of it.
dangerous. Got to keep the people dependent.
And back then, they were talking about the family was the basic unit of the church, and that during Armageddon, the dad would have to, set up your own sacrament meeting, and assign families members to give talks for church. Like that the home was going to be where the church was.
And that's when they set up all the radio stations, the ham radio stations in one building in the stake. And they called somebody to be a ham radio specialist in each ward. Remember that?
Well, they say that home is where you hang your sacrament cups.
Yeah.
Trays.
Sacrament.
So Kendall has joined us. Kendall is from, say the name of your podcast.
Learned Empowerment, where we go over all the beliefs that actually work, that replace supernatural beliefs that don't
sort
work.
of a science-based approach.
Love it.
Yep. Lots
And
of psychology.
Kendall is the youngest of the group, and he loved General Conference.
I was obsessed, guys. Are you ready for my rant?
Please.
Okay.
Take notes.
Love
Please.
to hear.
You better than I don't remember much, so.
Okay, so I'm actually pulling up on my computer right now. I was that guy that during General Conference, I had not one, but two laptops going. One where I would make memes, and the other one I would take notes and post to social media. I didn't know how to do like Facebook and Twitter at the same time, so I'd post on both. And it was because I literally thought this is God speaking to the world. I took it that seriously. So I would watch all the sessions over 2 days, taking notes literally every second. And I felt so bad when I wasn't listening because I had to grab a life-changing quote and turn it into a meme because I knew that if I didn't do it right then, I would never do it. And then after conference, I would reread all the talks twice. And that's what I have pulled up on my computer right now. I would rank all the quotes by life-changing score. I would give them a star rating. and the top 15 or 20 quotes I would turn into posters. I would print them, and I had different parts of my house where every 6 months I would change the poster to have the most life-changing quotes.
Dang.
And you did this on purpose, Kendall?
Yeah, I did this for like a decade straight.
Wow.
And when did you serve your mission?
2004 to 2006 in Argentina.
And so you had testified to everybody that the value of the church was living prophet.
Oh, it was there's this talk by President Hinckley, the wonderful things the Lord hath revealed, and I use that religiously on my mission. It goes over 8 things that only, according to President Hinckley, only the LDS church had that no other place or church had. And the one that I always had the most time on was modern revelation. I would pull out my posters. I'd be like, I made these and I brought these, and you can post them in your house so you can have the spirit. And yeah, I was a piece of work, guys. Like wow. It feels weird recalling all of that, but like I literally thought that it was the most important knowledge. There's a quote by Brigham Young and by President Benson that says, of all the knowledge of the earth, the most important thing is the words of the modern prophet. So what else was I supposed to do? I had to treat this with the deference that it deserved, and it was sold as.
You were the guy clogging up my Facebook feed, and then my wife would forward all those memes, so much so that our bishop unfriended her.
The bishop was like, "You're too Mormon for me. I can't handle it. Please stop with the quotes."
In fact, I still actually haven't gone public with me losing my testimony, actually. And the few people I've told, I actually regret telling. All my closest friends, after like 2 times General Conference happened and I didn't flood all of social media, they contacted me and they're like, what is going on? Are you okay?
Oh man.
Oh, wow. One thing I remember when I went in April of '73 was I had a briefcase with my scriptures and a notepad in it, and they wouldn't let me take it into the tabernacle. They thought it might be a bomb. Yeah, I remember that.
And Tim said, it's not like I have a bomb in here.
Yeah. Well, I opened it up and I showed them, but you had to leave it at they had a little booth where you had to leave your backpack, or what people like take backpacks.
It's not C4, it's just Play-Doh. That's what Tim said.
Yeah, but I do remember that, and I thought, this is weird, because when you go to state conference, you take your scriptures and you go through, and then remember years later, they would stop to make sure people were reading their scriptures during conference, and tell you what page it was on or wherever, and to look it up. I remember that.
Right.
But it was
Rob,
they were checking your scriptures to see if you were on the right page.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Okay,
yeah,
Rob,
that was in the 90s.
I've got 3 short conference memories to share before I need to exit. The first was, my dad was one of the first people to get a satellite dish, one of those big monstrosities.
Oh, yeah.
And so we pulled a TV outside and we sat in our hot tub and watched General Conference. We didn't have to go to the church. Second memory, I remember when the air conditioning went out in the conference center or the tabernacle, and President Hinckley got up, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry, it's hot in here, but you're not as hot as you will be if you don't repent. That was pretty funny, I thought.
Wow.
And then
an object lesson.
My final memory was President Benson's Mothers Come Home talk. And after that talk, relatives, including females who were like full-time working nurses, actually complained and said, how can he say that? How can he tell mothers to come home? And I remember just this icky feeling in the room, like, oh, did somebody say something against the prophet? I'll never forget that.
Wow.
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 Yeah, evil speaking of the Lord's anointed, I took that super seriously. If anyone poo-pooed my quotes that I put on the wall, I'd be like, oh, clutch my pearls.
How can you do that?
I mean, we took her outside and drowned her in the hot tub, so it's fine. It's fine.
Do you know what's funny though? You say that in jest, but like the righteous mind at first blush is like, oh yeah, she deserved it. Like if she was that unrighteous, like it goes there for at least a half second.
Well, you know what I remember about Sundays that conference is we weren't like rushing to get ready, right?
Right.
Everything was calm, but it wasn't time for conference yet, so we'd turn the TV on. But the only thing they would let us watch was this sort of like Bible Christian things with it was like Gumby and Pokey, but it was a Bible thing. Can't remember the name of that show.
Veggie Tales?
No, it was way more boring. I can't even remember, but it would do some Bible story, and it would just be as slow as molasses, and it would get us ready to fall asleep for conference, I think is what it was. I remember getting the pillows, laying on the living room floor, listening to the first song, and then waking up for the final song. Megan, what are your memories?
So I think probably my first memories of General Conference were when I lived in Connecticut, and the chapel was about 30 minutes away. And so we used to pack up a picnic lunch, and we would drive to the chapel, and we would go watch the first session of Sunday conference, and then we would have a picnic out on the lawn, and then go watch the second session of conference, and then go home. And so that was like our only obligation. And then we got, extra bonus brown noser points if we, volunteered to go on the Saturday sessions. So that was kind of like my first experience with conference. And then I have to say, unfortunately, when I moved to San Antonio, most of my early memories of General Conference were over at the Cox household, because the Coxes had a big screen TV. And so much like, Rob was sort of talking about, is that Barry insisted that we could not get in the pool on Sunday because he made a deal with the devil. I mean, God, that if we would not swim on Sundays, then none of the kids would drown. But that didn't apply to the hot tub, so we could still get in the hot tub. But then, we had the big screen TV on, and there would always be some kind of fruit salad, which has another sort of dark connotation, which I won't get into right now. It's a rabbit hole for another day. But we spent a lot of conference weekends at the Cox household listening to conference. And then whenever there was a break, Barry would sort of like pontificate about his thoughts about the talks, and what he thought was the best thing for all of us to do, and his like reasoning behind what he thought was the real message. So it was all very horrible. But then, later on, so my birthday is in early October, and many times my birthday would be on Conference Sunday. And I always considered it such a great privilege to spend my birthday at the feet of the prophets and apostles. And I would low-key turn up the volume on the television really, really high, so that even when there were people in my house who didn't want to listen to conference, that they could not help but hear it. That was directed directly at my former spouse, who did not want to listen. And I would always make little, bingo cards for my kids, and we would have, Skittles or M&Ms or something that they could like put on their bingo card. And then when they filled their bingo card, they could eat whatever the treat was. So I tried to make conference like fun for my kids. But here's something that I brought along, a little show and tell just for this. I have a couple of my conference journals.
Wow.
And I would sit in conference. I would sit there with the TV on with my colored pencils and my markers, and I would draw pictures of the ties that each speaker was wearing. And then occasionally I would get lucky enough that there would be a female speaker. Oh wait, no, there wasn't. Nope, there wasn't. Nope. Oh,
So you
there's
were
one. Look, there was a female speaker. There was her scarf and her jacket, and I
and
would
her
take
pin,
notes.
right? Her brooch.
Yeah, she would have a little pin. This was one of the few, like normally now we see women wearing just like a suit jacket and a plain colored blouse. This was Carol M. Stevens, I think from 2012 or something like that. She was wearing a suit jacket with a different colored blouse and a scarf.
Wow.
That's something that you don't see, very, like I'm into fashion. That's something you don't see very often, but I always would color the pattern of the tie. Sometimes I would do just like the geometric pattern or whatever. So while they were talking, I would always do like their tie colors next to whatever their talk was.
Wow.
So what's with the women speakers in conference all using the same voice?
Because they have to be meek and humble and submissive, and people did not really respond well sometimes to the Sherry Dew voice, where she was actually articulate and insistent, and people would get upset by that. And so I guess women decided that they needed to be a little more, I don't know, demure in their talking. And then sometimes I would do like a little infographic of whatever the quote was. So I would do my little doodles and things, and sometimes I would just like play with my crayons, and that was what I did for General Conference.
They're all transferable skills. That's why you have such a successful podcast now.
I guess so. I've really used those doodling skills a lot in my podcast.
And I like how you were trying to tie the conference talks to real life.
See what you did there.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
Yeah. But I always went to conference. I mean, it probably for like between, I don't know, 2000. Oh no, further back, probably between 95 and 2015. I really, really wanted conference to be something special. And I really, I went to it fasting and praying and pleading with God to give me some kind of direction that would bring me some comfort and some peace, because I was in turmoil all the time and I was so unhappy all the time. And I just remember being so disappointed that most of the time the messages that we got were just generic, I felt, and I was never more disappointed than the General Conference right after September 11th, when I really expected Gordon B. Hinckley to stand up there and say something profound and to reassure us that, yes, like the last days are coming and we're going to have tribulations and whatever. Like, I just was expecting some kind of comfort, that the world felt so unsafe to me right then. And I really wanted something that was going to bring comfort, and it was just nothing. They didn't even really talk about it. They didn't even mention it.
It didn't even happen.
It was like it didn't happen. And I was so full of grief that I just was so disappointed that there was not some kind of like earth-shattering message of like, it's okay, be comforted. We have the answers. We know when Jesus is coming and you're going to be okay. There was none of that. There was no comfort.
Who was the woman speaker at that conference? Because the only thing I remember about her was her hair was coming up in the back. She had like a duck tail or whatever you call it.
The Karen cut?
Yeah, she had something in the back of her hair, and that really bugged me. That was the last time I watched conference.
You don't remember what the woman said?
No.
What a patriarchal prick.
To be fair, I don't remember a lot of what the women said. Julie B. Beck was one of them. That was probably the one with the haircut. Her talk was titled, "What I Hope My Granddaughters and Grandsons Will Understand About Relief Society." That's just what we want to hear right after the United States has been attacked. And then Sylvia Allred and Barbara Thompson, they talked about charity and covenants. Charity never faileth, and cleave unto the covenants.
Okay.
That's right. Somebody commented named Kendall C. The last canonized scripture was section 138. And what year was that, Kendall?
So let's have everyone guess. I put in the chat the 4 guesses. So is it A, 1950, B, 1970, C, 1918, or D, 1900? C is correct. So it has been over 100 years since the true and living church has added scriptures.
Is 138 the one about the Joseph F. Smith had about the dead?
Yep.
Okay. But that wasn't added in 1918. It was
October
canonized
3rd,
until, but it didn't become part of the D&C until much later.
Well, but that's when it was revealed.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
My
So,
mistake.
like,
Yeah.
you know, the
Okay.
true and living church, the
Well-
church of constant revelation, hasn't revealed anything since 1918. And some people will say, like, oh, the Family Proclamation was one of those, and the True and Living Christ document was one of those. Like, those aren't revelations. Those are like policy reinforcers. Those are like, you know, something you 3-hole punch and put in the back of the binder. Like, it's just another handout.
But isn't
In
that
fact,
so
I think that they
appropriate?
did that.
Since then we have become exclusively a policy-based church. That's all
All
we
about
are.
the handbooks and the manuals.
The
Yeah.
other thing to point out is that he was a polygamist. We haven't received any the church has not received any revelations since the prophets became monogamous.
But all the polygamous sects, as well as the RLDS, have additional scriptures.
Yes.
Yep. And didn't the RLDS elect, or however they do it, they've got a woman prophet now, don't they?
Yes.
She's onboarding. I don't remember the timeline.
She's like the prophet pro tem or something.
Yeah, something like that. And so that's pretty cool. One thing about conference that, you know, after just like Megan said, is like there's like no mention of like one of the century's biggest stories, right? It's for 100 years, people remember it, right? And there were crickets. And prior to that, the only other sort of weird thing was like we went from 2 years of food storage down to 1 year. And I was like, oh, so Armageddon's not going to be as bad. It's only going to be half as bad or something. I don't know. But also around 2000, I don't know, 6, 7, or 8, my daughter was waiting. No, wait. My daughter had met somebody and they were starting to get serious, but my daughter was feeling like she should go on a mission. And so they prayed and thought, the conference will give us our answer, right, of what we should do.
Yep.
And so my future son-in-law, heard all the talks that said, don't wait for anything, get married. And my daughter heard all the talks that said, don't do anything else but go on a mission. And it was the first time I realized that they tell two different things. The scriptures all you know, are pro-slavery or anti-slavery. It's just a matter of what scripture you want to use here and there. And then later on, you know, I would hear about how, you know, you want to hear what the disagreements are within the Quorum of the 12 or 15 that we grow to know as the ex-Mormons, is when one of the talks says one side of an issue and another talk says like the completely opposite. Then you know that those guys are going at it during their meetings, you know, and Jesus apparently can't tell them which one's right.
It was Sherry Dew's talk that I remember her.
Oh, from
doing the funny
2011?
thing. No, 2001.
Okay.
I remember her hair doing that thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the one.
I always used to love Sherry Dew because I just felt like she was a really intelligent woman, and she was a businesswoman, and she was accomplished, and yet she was still allowed to speak in general conference, you know?
Right.
But it was always, it was always problematic that people always focused on the fact that she'd never been married. And I was like, so what?
I always
Yes.
thought there should be a contrarian to her called Sherry Don't.
All the other Mormon women are contrarian to her. All the other Mormon women are Sherry Don'ts. All the other general authority women are Sherry Don'ts.
So
You know
Randy,
that-
we haven't heard
go
from
ahead.
you, so go ahead, Randy.
Oh yeah, I kind of feel like the kid on the playground that's the last to be picked on the team, you know.
That's
We'll
right.
pick you
Start
first
wearing
next time.
socks that match.
Megan, I brought my journal that I used to keep during conference as well. I did this during one session. This was
That was
2
last
years
year.
ago. This was 2 years ago.
I love it.
I
Love it.
I have 3 things to tell you about conference. The first thing is when I was a little kid, I was so confused because I never knew when they said the prayer, should I bow my head and close my eyes? Or since I'm not there, can I just kind of hang with my
That's
eyes
right.
open?
Yes.
And
Yes.
half of my family would close their eyes and the other half would kind of peer and watch because we're supposed to be watching it.
They're still broadcasting it. They're still showing the guy talking.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
we
true.
have
That's
to
true.
we have to see him pray. Then the second thing was my most memorable conference because you can tell how spiritual I am. My most memorable conference was in, I think it was 2001 or 2002. I'm listening to conference in Memphis, Tennessee, and I hear all of a sudden, after one of the talks, a general authority got up and said, Brother Eugene Masterson, could you please report to the outside of the tabernacle? And this freaked me out because Eugene Masterson was my father-in-law to be. And they called him, that's the first time I think it's ever happened, where they would page someone in the audience, had him go out, and they had to tell him that his wife passed away during the session. She was watching from home because she didn't feel good. And I'm watching in Memphis, Tennessee, and they're in Arizona. And it's like, holy crap. I can't believe this just happened. And then my phone started ringing, and it was my sweetheart who I was, seeing. And I wasn't engaged yet, but I was engaged and then got married to her. And number 3, we kind of briefly talked about state conference. This was a horrible time when everyone in Arizona was in a living hell because we met in this building called the Tri-Stake Center. It was big enough for 3 stakes to meet in Mesa, Arizona. It was near the temple, but it had no air conditioning. And in April, what doesn't matter whether it was April or October.
Same temperature.
Yeah, I mean, it was just sweltering in there. The temperature instantly was up to 98.6 degrees with everyone in there, and then continued to build. So everyone would bring papers to do this with, that fan motion they do. And then they finally smartened up and passed fans out to the crowd. As they walked in the door, they had these paper, like vote for whoever, only it was just
Pedro.
paper fans. Yeah, vote for Pedro. And that's how we survived. And now that I realize how poor the church is, I can see why they didn't install air conditioning.
That's right.
Oh
Couldn't
my
afford it.
gosh.
And I'll
Yeah,
say
that would have been
today,
a
I
burden.
think Phoenix was 95.
Wow.
That on the cold days, yeah. Anyway, yeah, those are my 3
Yikes.
general conference experiences. I just loved general conference, not for the same reason Kendall did. I loved it because I could just lay back on the couch and take a little nap. And
Didn't have to give a lesson. Didn't have to
No
prepare
lesson.
anything. Didn't have to
Nothing.
comb the kids' hair.
Well, this was until I was old enough to realize that I wasn't going to watch it anyway. So I was a little rebellious. I rarely sat all the way through the Sunday session, and I never tuned into the Saturday session. I would spend it at the lake, trusting that Kendall would make the appropriate and copious notes for me. So
I got your back.
thank you, sir.
He took notes so you didn't have to. I love it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I
He-
eventually felt bad because a few of my friends were like, "Yeah, I don't watch conference anymore. I just go to your Facebook page now." And I was like,
Oh, brother.
Oh my gosh, Peter, I'm sorry that it's a little bit of a long one. It's explosive. There, if you go to about fast forward to about 1 hour in, that's the point where everybody's mind explodes, and it was crazy. It was a wild one today.
It was really wild. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, when none of us should be surprised at this point, but somehow we still are. At least I still am. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't know what a crazy person's going to do until they do it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's like, rational people trying to apply rationality to irrational behavior. Of course, we're going to be surprised. But yeah, General Conference. I had a love-hate relationship with it because I did love like taking a break from being a mom for a while. I would just say like, here's your bingo card, and here are your Skittles or your marshmallows or whatever we did. And then I kind of got a break for the day, And I remember feeling like halftime between the two sessions of conference. I remember feeling like that was kind of like recess a little bit. Like all the people that I knew, we would call and text only during that 2-hour window. I would quick run to the grocery store during that 2-hour window. And I didn't ever want to be caught like calling or texting somebody like during the actual session. So I'd be like, I better hurry up and text them now. Because, I thought that all of the other, good Mormons were watching all 4 sessions of conference plus whatever meeting happened on, what was it, the Saturday night, depending on what year it was.
Well, it used to be 3 days. You used to have primary and young women's on Friday. To start
General primary?
General primary and yeah. Yeah, they used to have it. Used to be 3 days.
Wow.
Well, they have all the regional reps met on Thursday, and then Friday they'd have it for primary and mutual age, and then Sunday it used to be 3 days.
But it wasn't part of General Conference. It was, that was broadcast.
No, it wasn't. It might have been broadcast in Salt Lake. I don't know, but I remember
like
we were
the bonus
driving.
Session.
Yeah, we were driving through there one time. We stopped at Temple Square. Didn't even know what was going on. That was a long time ago.
So guess what the first word I learned when I left the church was?
What?
This is completely what describes my study journal now. So I remember I had already lost my testimony, but at this time, like I was like, all my friends are here. This is probably the best way to raise my son. I'll just go and I'll, not believe, but like there's so much good. I'll just go for the community and the principles, right? And like shortly after I made this decision, I went to a priesthood leadership meeting because I was in the elders quorum presidency at the time. And I just remember being like, everything the leaders are saying are just, it's hot air. And I had my laptop because I'm that guy that takes his laptop to take notes in meetings. I always have been.
Two of them.
I was looking up words to mean like, what does it mean when you use a lot of words that say nothing? Does anyone know the word I'm thinking of?
Word salad.
Word salad works, but there's an even better word that I like more. Bloviation.
Oh, I love that word.
It means using a lot of words and saying nothing. So like I'm putting in quotes in the chat as we're talking, And like now I see that so many of those things are bloviation. It's a lot of words, but at the end of the day, it's just fluff and it really says nothing. It changes nothing. It gives you no new insights. It gives you zero skills. It gives you zero perspective. They just serve to give you a temporary uplift of feeling so that you have a good association with the church.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
I totally identify with that because that's exactly how I felt after, like working so hard to get myself prepared for General Conference because that's what we were supposed to do, right? I would spend the entire week beforehand like listening to old General Conference and making sure that I was reading and studying and fasting and praying. And I would always come to Saturday session of General Conference fasting, and I would not break my fast until after the evening session was over. And then the next morning, I would fast again for the first two sessions and then not break my fast until the second session was over. And I was just so wanting something really profound or something that I felt was like speaking directly to me and to my experiences. And it just all felt like the same crap recycled over and over again. It was like we had the same message 6 months ago. Why are we not getting something new or something better? And they always had an answer for that too. It was like God's word doesn't change,
We need the same
except when it
thing.
does.
Oh yeah, this was my burden to bear, was that problem. I was like, after a few years, I'm like, okay, yeah, these are like good rehashes and like remixes, but like I want the meat. Where is the meat?
that's right.
They-
So
Recycled
Stephen, this will be
stuff.
your first time attending General Conference, I understand.
Well, actually, it will be the General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ, headquartered in Monongahela, Pennsylvania. They are I like to call the April 6th, 1830 Church of the Restoration. And so I will be attending there. I'm very excited to head out to it.
Cool.
So actually, it's very appropriate because the very first church of the Restoration that I ever darkened the door of was the Church of Jesus Christ when I first started my channel. So the very first General Conference I will attend will be theirs. And I have to tell you, the Church of Jesus Christ are awesome, freaking awesome people. They're lovely. They're wonderful. They recently just had a conference at my Christian community here in Florida. And their transparency, they do things right by people. They don't have a single paid person in that church. They had a secretary who had a job for a few years, and then she retired, and they devolved it to other people. So there's nobody even on the payroll of this remarkable Pentecostal expression of the Restoration.
Wow.
Yeah,
Very
my whole
cool.
family did a church history tour when I was 14. We did all the church history sites, and I remember stopping and doing some event with that church, and I remember thinking like, they spoke quicker and more intelligently than like any other church person I had talked to. I remember that.
That and they actually speak in tongues, which the Book of Mormon makes it very clear that if you want to look for a church that has what is a true church, it's one where all the gifts are operational.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I've experienced that in that church. It's a pretty remarkable body of believers who are doing really, I mean, I tell people pound for pound per capita, there's more miracles happening in that church than just about any church that I know of, in the sense that they really are following. I always tell like the April 6th, 1830 church, because that's what it is. Like they're connected to the evangelical world. They're connected to Protestantism, and they're connected to the Restoration. And I tell people, say, one of the most Christian books ever written on American soil is the Book of Mormon, right? And so the Book of Mormon is this great Protestant Pentecostal Christian document that appeals to my community. And it's actually the knowledge of the Bible that they had that was brought to the table. And so Tim says it's a splinter group. No, Tim, and I know you're
It's
here.
not.
A splinter
not.
group. No. So this church actually rose from the ashes of Sidney Rigdon's experiment to try to start a united order in Western Pennsylvania. This group gets its priesthood authority through Sidney Rigdon, and for a short time did get baptized into Brigham's church. Okay. But actually, when they found out that they were practicing polygamy, they said that was done under false pretenses. So the reality is that this is a church that was founded on April 6, 1830. Their priesthood authority comes through Sidney Rigdon, and they have been one of the most remarkable churches in the Restoration. They have been in their own bubble for a very long period of time, but they started interacting with other expressions of the Restoration and other evangelicals within the last 10 years. And so, yeah, they have their own history. They have their own World Conference Center that I'll be going to in Greenburgh, Pennsylvania this April. So they're just like this special place, the church that exists. And if you want to see what primitive Mormonism looks like, you got to go to their conferences. You got to go to their local congregations, because then you'll get a sense of what Mormonism really truly was at the beginning.
So does that mean we ex-Brighamites would have called them the Rigdonites?
So they were, but they're more Bickertonites, because so what happened was these people like followed Sidney Rigdon, doing the United Order, and Bickerton, William Bickerton stayed back and said, listen, I don't want to have anything to do with this whole United Order thing. And so they followed him, and then that was a complete disaster. And so they went back to William Bickerton. And then what happens is William Bickerton tells them, hey, the Brighamites are actually practicing polygamy, and none of the people in the church actually believed him. So they went and got involved in the Brighamite church, and so it was a church of one, William Bickerton. And then when it was announced in 1852 that they were practicing polygamy, because the missionaries were sent there, they were assured, no, we're not practicing a polygamy. Then that all came out. So then this remnant of people came back to William Bickerton and said, we're so sorry. And that was really the beginning of the reorganization, if you will, of this church. And what's so fascinating is it never got subsumed into what would have most likely happened is any church east of the Mississippi would have been subsumed into the RLDS. They never joined up with that group. So they're just this independent expression of the Restoration that is very primitive. It's like, this is the early days of the church. And I'll tell you, I think they're just lovely people. I'm friends with all the apostles and the president of the church, and Josh Gailey's an evangelist in the church. He wrote this great book called Witnessing Miracles, the historical evidence for the resurrection and the Book of Mormon. And these are just...
So that has actual photos of the resurrection. Is that true?
It would be nice if it did, wouldn't it? But I want to share here, too, with this Book of Mormon that I received. So I got this Book of Mormon from Josh Gailey. And I'm sorry I'm crashing here, by the way, but I just love the...
Oh, no. I wanted to give you an official welcome to Steve Peinecker of Mormon Book Reviews, and just to acknowledge that it's all Steve's fault that I have a channel.
That's true.
Yay!
It's very true.
The great connector. We can.
And we're all
stay
grateful.
loving you.
Love it, Gene, and I love you. So I got this leather-bound edition of the Book of Mormon from the from Josh Gailey of the Church of Jesus Christ. Last year, I was at a conference here in Florida, and I asked for the apostles of the church to sign their name and give me their favorite Book of Mormon verse. And so I got 11 of the 12. Now, number 12, I'm heading to April. I'm heading to your general conference. And you get your signature and get your favorite Book of Mormon passage. I think it's really important that people that are Utah-based saints need to understand that there are hundreds of expressions in groups and sects within the Restoration.
Yes.
And one of the things I love to do is every single Mormon missionary that serves in the Lakewood Ranch ward in Florida gets a personal copy of a Bickertonite Book of Mormon. And the purpose of this is, first of all, interfaith, which is really important. And second of all, it's to let them know that, hey, there are many other expressions within your faith tradition that you have no idea that even exist. And this church had a conference a few weeks ago at my Christian community here in Florida. And those Mormon missionaries were invited by me to come and attend. And it was a beautiful experience. See, this is the thing. It's like, I just want us to talk to each other. I want us to get along.
Exactly.
I want us to understand that the other people that you think are different than you are actually more alike than you even realize. And that's the purpose of what the work that I'm trying to do. And, so I'm sorry. I jumped in, and I just want to let you all know that, I'm so glad that Gene has been such a good friend for a very long time now. And I just want to offer my support to the work that he's doing. And I think these conversations that we're having and you guys are having tonight are very important.
Hey, Steve.
Thank you.
I wanted to know if the Book of Mormon, if their Book of Mormon, is it identical to the Book of Mormon that we know?
So it's the versification is identical. So this church has basically been formally organized in the 1850s. They used the Utah-based Book of Mormon until the 1930s, and they came out with their own edition.
Oh.
And then they came out with another edition in 1950. And then this edition, the current edition I hold, is from 2001. The versification is exactly the same. They have gone back and made some changes. For instance, not changes, but actually going back to the 1830 text. So one of those verses is where it says Mary is the mother of God in the original, is in this. So they kind of went back and changed, not changed, but actually went back to the original manuscripts on some of this stuff. But about 99% of this Book of Mormon is going to fall in with the Salt Lake-based Book of Mormon.
That is so intriguing. Do they believe in modern day revelation as well?
Yes. And what's so cool about this church is you could have Sister Jones from a predominantly African-American congregation in northern Florida, just outside of Tallahassee, receive a word from the Lord. And it makes its way up through the hierarchy, if you will, and there's not much of one. And they'll accept that and vote on it. And so Sister Jones, African-American woman, can receive a word from the Lord that will instruct the church.
Wow. Very cool.
That's my kind of church, man. I love it. I want to hear from everybody.
They're a restoration church.
Yes.
They,
I like to call them primitive Mormons.
Primitive Mormonism.
Yep.
Gotcha.
But it sounds like women have a voice.
Yes. So women not only have a voice in a prophetic role, and actually there have been, I will tell you, this is kind of controversial in some quarters within that church, but there have been acknowledged by leadership in that church that there have been prophetesses in that church. Okay, not formally, but prophetesses who operate in the prophetic. But also females have the role of deaconess in the church as well. So you actually have women who do have a role to play in the church as well.
That's right. So Peter Kim.
Okay, so it's still patriarchal in that way, but there is this place for women to play a major role in the church, including the supernaturally created hymn book, Songs of Zion, by Arlene Buffington, which has recently been accepted by the church as an official hymnal. And the story behind that supernaturally produced hymnal is really remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah, so Steve, you are approaching 10,000 subscribers. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'll let you know that you in the company that you're watching right now is somebody with 11,300 subscribers between some of us. Someone on our panel right now has 11,000 subscribers.
Awesome.
And so I'll bet you if you invited her onto your channel or she invited you onto, if you invited her onto your channel or she invited you onto her channel, magic would happen and you guys would grow even more. So
hook us up.
I am the connector and you are now hereby connected, and I'll send you each other's Facebook.
Awesome. That's great.
Well, we were on a panel a little while ago. I can't remember the exact subject of it, but it was a fascinating discussion, and I absolutely loved it. And there was who was the other person on the panel? Now I'm going to have to go back and look at my notes to remind myself, because I've been on so many. But shoot, I wish I could just remember right off the top of my head. Anyway, we were on it. We had a discussion before, and I absolutely loved it. And I loved the idea that I think that was kind of the crux of it, was just that we want to listen to each other's ideas and understand each other's positions. So, I would love to have you on and
great. Yeah.
I pulled my book from publication, so I don't know if I'll have to wait until I republish it before I come on yours. But
Well, and then again, this is more than just book reviews. We do culture, we do entertainment, it's basically Mormon culture in general, so it doesn't have to be about a book. It can just be about your life story. Gene came on to tell his story, and Gene, to reports from Sunstone every year. That's our annual tradition. And so we want to just be able to kind of be, be flexible in these, and really honestly, I think it's so important in these very divisive times where we can just be decent to each other and talk to each other. I mean, there's so many great stories in the Restoration and so many wonderful people, and they're heroes to me.
Yeah,
and there's scoundrels.
I totally agree with that.
There's scoundrels in it too, but it's so biblical in that sense, right? There are heroes and scoundrels, heroes who are also scoundrels in the Bible. And it speaks to our humanity. And I think it's really important to see this modern day biblical epic happening on American soil, where you literally have a people cross over the plains, go into the desert, and make it bloom. It's a biblical story. It parallels an ancient story. I mean, doesn't that resonate with us? Just this common humanity that we have, and this divine connection that we can have with being fellow image bearers. To me, that's so beautiful. It's a beautiful story. Mormonism is a beautiful story. Christianity is. Atheism is. Humanity. Our divinity, in the fact that we're image bearers, makes us divine individuals, whether you believe in God or not, because we're having this divine conversation tonight.
I love to hear other people's stories, and I think that is the thing that connects us more than anything else, because we all have similarities in our stories, and we all have similar turning points and similar stuck points and similar ideas that come from the working through of all of those things. And I think that's one of the things I love about humanity the most, is that our stories are so different, but they are so the same. It's the human story.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to that.
Does anyone know the researcher Kristen Neff?
No.
I know Rick Neff.
Oh, I don't know if they're related. She teaches about self-compassion, and she's like, one of the most happifying ideas is when you feel connected to every person on the planet. That is the most correlative to having a meaningful, transcendent purpose.
Yeah, I talked about that when I was on Church of Korihor on Exmo Joe's channel. We did a little meditation about zooming out, and that's one of the things that I think has moved me the most in the last couple of years, is feeling the overview effect. That's right. Feeling the connection to the entire human family. And the crux of that it comes down to, for me personally, what resonates with me is that I am made of stardust, and so is every other human being on the planet. And as such, that's how we're all connected. We are all made of the same material, and so we're all connected to each other, and we're all connected to everything in the universe as well. And I love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Life-changing.
Just real quick, Gene, I just want to thank you for sending me the link tonight. It's 11:35 here in Florida. It's kind of late, but I just wanted to honor you and the work that you're doing.
And let me tell you something. I don't know if you saw my other link, but tomorrow I am going to show an interview with a former mission president, and it's a real good interfaith, we'll say.
That's awesome.
Talk.
Hey, Stephen, before you go, I just want to remind everybody that this Friday is not this Friday, sorry. A week from this Friday is Generous Conference. I will be hosting Generous Conference on my channel.
It'll be a gooder Friday.
It'll be a better Friday. Okay. I would love it if everybody would record a small message of love, of hope, of inclusion, something that resonates with you right now. You can either put it as unlisted on your YouTube channel and send me the link, or you can show up live in my StreamYard, and I'll be posting that around wherever. But I'd love to have a lot of pre-recorded messages that we can just play, and we'll go for as many hours as we can next Friday.
So reach out to me, because the Reform Mormonism Conference is also going to be happening with Evan Charlie and Rob Lauer. And I think I've agreed to record something for that. So maybe I'll record something for that and for you as well. Gene sent me, we're friends on Facebook, but just reach out to me and I'll see what I can do. And by the way, Gene has a very cute cat there. I'm a cat guy myself, so it's always a good thing. Yep, bringing cats. Yep, that's a beautiful. Oh my goodness, I'm tempted to bring Miss Mindy, my cat. Into
you want to see all my cats on my bed? I've got 5 cats on my bed and 1 in my lap.
So we're all crazy cat people too. On top of that, that's awesome.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for letting me participate tonight, Gene. I really appreciate you. You're awesome, and
you're always welcome, Steve.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And God bless you all. Have a great weekend.
That was great.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. That was great.
Hey, Exmo Joe, I don't know that I have set a time limit for Generous Conference, but I know that's a little dangerous, especially for you. I think you could probably go on for hours, and we would love every second of it.
He's a preacher.
Yeah, exactly.
So what time is it going to start?
It's going to start at noon Central Time on Friday, April 4th.
Which is 10 o'clock my time? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Megan, I sent you the Facebook connection for Steve, and I sent Steve yours. So send a request and get something happening there. And just as a matter of bookkeeping, we have to remind everybody that we've got 99 cents tonight, thanks to Stephen Alma Stansfield. And I don't know where it is. There it is. And so, thanks, Stephen. That pays 2,400th of my expenses. And so, if there's 2,399 other people that want to chip 99 cents in, go ahead. So anyhow, it was cool to have Steve on. If there's anybody else in the audience that wants to come on, we are still accepting places in Steve's. In Tim's living room, because Tim has a huge living room, right?
Poor Peter, it's 3 a.m. in Australia, so he stayed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great.
Peter still looks, if he's not, passed out drunk, he could come on. As long as you have a mic and a camera. And so.
I remember when I listened to the conference, we were always looking for some kind of a gem, and they never gave us anything.
Yeah.
It's when you want it most. It's like they don't say a word about it. Whatever it may be, you're thinking, there should be some
Go ahead.
Like with COVID, I was sure that they would give some kind of counsel about COVID.
Yes.
Nothing. Didn't even mention it.
Well, I remember when you used to tell us to avoid
regarding women is going to be the Mormonish podcast is anticipating something really, really big with women going to be announced. The only thing I could think of is they're going to have a woman speaker speak in the priesthood session, and then equality will be achieved.
And she's going to announce that women can hold their own babies when the baby gets blessed.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
A woman is going to speak at the priesthood session and talk about how important it is to support the priesthood holders.
Oh, you're right.
Maybe she'll give a talk on her donut recipe.
Yes. Or they're going to announce that women can now also be greeters at the doors as well.
Right.
Women can supply the sacrament bread.
That's what somebody else said that.
Yeah.
Maybe girls will be able to pass the sacrament because I remember thinking about that when you pass it in the row, like if a girl passes to me in a row, does that am I getting any blessings from it? Because a girl.
Yes, I have passed the sacrament. I passed the sacrament almost every Sunday because I was always sitting on the end of the aisle and I always passed the sacrament. So
That's right.
Well,
There
it gets
was a-
cooties all over the bread, though. Maybe.
There was a ward in Florida that didn't have enough men, and they allowed women to pass the sacrament. This is
What?
in the 70s, I think. Yes.
dang.
Yes.
Somebody's
I heard
going
it
to
from
hell.
somebody.
But not for that.
I heard about it from somebody a long time ago. Maxine Hanks asked me a while ago, do you remember that? And I'm going, I told Maxine that like back in the 90s, and she expects me now, 30 years later, to remember it. It's like, no. But anyway, I do remember the story because somebody I knew was a missionary there and saw it happen. So anyway.
I did give one of my children a priesthood blessing at one point.
No.
I did. And this is actually it's a little bit of a, I mean, you know, I like to joke around and make fun as much as anybody, and we can always do that with almost anything, and I won't be offended. But my youngest daughter was very, very ill at one point, and she'd contracted some kind of a virus, and she was extremely dehydrated, and I took her to the urgent care thinking that I knew this particular urgent care had the capability of doing IV fluids. And so I took her there, and I was sitting in the room with her, and the doctor came in, and she took one look at my daughter and looked at me and immediately turned around and left the room. And I was like, okay, where'd she go? And she came back in a couple minutes later, and she said, I've called an ambulance. They're on the way to come and pick you and your daughter up, and they'll drive both of you to the hospital. She said your child's color is extremely concerning to me. She was basically gray at that point. And
Wow.
she couldn't even hold down teaspoons full of water. And it had been several hours that way. So she was really in a bad way. But I felt really peaceful about everything. I felt like she was going to be okay. So the doctor said, you know, the ambulance is on the way, and she left the room, and my daughter was laying on the table, and she was really listless. She really, like, I picked her up and her limbs were limp already, and her color was very gray. And so she just was laying there on the table. And when the doctor left the room, I sort of, you know, like leaned on top of her, and I put my hands around her and put my hands on her head like this. And I said, by the power of the Holy Melchizedek priesthood, which I have access to through my covenants in the temple, I bless you that you will make a full recovery. And she did. The end.
Yeah.
Nice.
It worked.
That was probably listened to more than 99% of the blessings that are given by elders, because you did it with faith.
That's right.
Yeah. We got in the ambulance, and the paramedics tried to put an IV in her arm, and the IV infiltrated, which means it didn't go into her vein. It just the fluid went into her tissue. And so her arm swelled up really, really huge, and I was holding her. And I said to the paramedic, is her arm supposed to be swelling up like that? And he said, no, we shouldn't be doing that. So he took the IV out, and he said, that's okay. When we get to the hospital, there will be somebody there who can, you know, give her an IV, and I'm sure they won't have any problems finding a vein. And we went in there, and they couldn't find a vein. They tried over and over. And by this time she was screaming because they had poked her so many times. Poor thing.
Ouch.
And I literally had to lay down on top of her and hold her arms down while they looked for veins in the top of her feet. And they eventually were able to find a vein in the top of her foot, and it rescued her. I mean, that's really what saved her. If they hadn't gotten that vein, she wouldn't have been able to get the fluids. And so, you know, once they finally got it set and they taped it down and everything was going okay, they said to me, Mom, go take a walk. And I was like, no, I'm okay. I'm gonna sit here with her. They said, go take a walk. And I walked out of the room and literally collapsed on the floor just from the stress of having to hold her down and listen to her scream and cry and think like they stuck her 22 times before they finally found a vein. And I really thought that she was I really thought it wasn't gonna work. It
How
was
old was
very
she, Megan?
traumatic. She was 18 months old.
Oh my gosh. So she couldn't even understand what was going on.
She had no idea. And so they put us up in the ICU, and the next morning she was rosy-cheeked and eating Cheerios and doing just fine.
And how old is she now?
She's 15. Yep. So that was my one priesthood blessing I gave.
That's right. The Church of Megan is true.
That's not a thing.
I know stories of women who've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
No, you're right, Randy. That was probably one of the most faithful things I ever did. I really was putting the life of my child in the hands of God, in my faith in God.
You know, I asked my sister one time, when my wife had cancer and she was in the hospital, every day they'd tell me that they placed her name on the prayer roll and my name as well in the temples. And, you know, it goes to every temple there is, supposedly. And I asked her at that time, I said, what is more effective, putting my name on the prayer roll in the temple or her 4-year-old daughter on her knees asking her Heavenly Father to please make her mommy better?
Hmm.
And
I would.
I have to go with the latter of the two.
Absolutely.
Set in faith, yeah.
Yeah. I still have a lot of, I think reverence is the right word for the expressions of faith like that, Randy. And those times that we really did put our trust in God.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the true form of prayer, in my humble opinion. That's prayer.
Yep.
Putting your faith in God or in the universe or whoever one believes in, turning it over to them. I think so many blessings now are done for a show, you know.
Yeah.
And the blessings that really, really count, I think, are those said with faith.
Yeah.
My dad used to tell me about, you know, when we talk about faith, he said that there was a man who had learned that with faith you can move mountains. And this really struck him because there was a huge mountain between him and the ocean view that he always wanted to have. So he was glad to hear this. So he'd walk outside to his front porch and say, mountains, I command you to move. And they didn't do it. And he tried like 3 times. Mountains, I command you. In the name of God, I command you to move. And after about 3 tries, he threw his hands up and said, I knew it wouldn't work anyway.
Oh,
A lesson of faith, you know.
Yep.
I just thought it meant mountains didn't have very good hearing.
Right.
Ha ha ha.
There's deaf as a rock.
Stone deaf.
Exactly.
That's bad.
Yep.
Who has a dog?
Well, that's my dog dreaming.
Oh, that's right. I remember
dreaming
now.
of catching
Sometimes your
squirrels.
dog has to be attended to.
Yeah. I actually am going to call it a night. I
All
have
right.
a hard
Thanks,
reset.
Megan.
My hard reset was supposed to happen 20 minutes ago and I'm spent for the day. So It's been lovely as always. I always
Keep trying.
love our conversations. Thank you, Tim, for opening up your living room to
You're
our
welcome.
nonsense.
It's not nonsense.
It's-
It makes
You're right.
sense.
It's the best kind of nonsense. It's meaningful nonsense.
That's right.
That's right. And
Thank
it's
you.
the best living room visit Tim ever gets because he never has to clean up after us.
That's right. That's so true. And we
That's
bring our
true.
own refreshments.
Yep.
Right.
All right. Love you guys. Have
Well,
a great
take care,
evening.
Megan.
Bye,
Night.
Megan.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm gonna head out as well, actually.
Okay. We'll see you.
Yeah. And this is a good time to just end anyway, unless Tim or Randy has any other.
Well, Hanley Cram wants to do it. Tim, ask me anything. Let's see
Okay.
what she wants to ask. Hallie, what do you want to ask?
Yeah, so ask anything. And it'd even be better if you came on, if you could. But one thing I'll say is 1 year ago, I did an episode with Peter Bleakley, and I probably could put it in the chat since we have some people watching still.
We've got 20 people.
It's General Conference predictions. And one thing we did for our predictions is we didn't predict that it was going to be what this coming conference was going to be, but it was going to be what the future 20 years might happen, right? And so it's really a great show. We called it Crazy Conference Predictions with Peter Bleakley. And I'll put it in the chat really quickly while we're waiting for Hallie's too shy. We actually did one already, but we didn't really ask Tim very much, right? We had kind of a ask Tim anything. And so yes, we were actually going to have in, I think, 2 weeks. I'm calling it Rin Tim Tim is what I have on the schedule. And it is going to be where Tim gets to not only say whatever he wants, but people can ask questions. It just came to me, Rin Tim Tim. Well, it doesn't mean anything, but it sounds hilarious already to me. I know.
Well,
I love
tell them how you figured out who I was.
Oh yeah, I was looking up some old Bloggernacle posts, and I saw somebody with the name of Enebar Mitt, and then I wondered what that meant, or Mitt. It was Mitt Enabtar, right? And so then I looked at Tim Rathbone's name, and Tim would comment in chats, and I started thinking, Tim backwards is Mitt, and Rathbone backwards Enabtar or something like that, right? So that was my first question to Tim on Facebook was, "Are you Mitt Enabtar?" And he said, "Yeah, why?" And so, well, I was reading some of your stuff that you wrote 20 years ago or whatever it was, and it was pretty good. So I want to know somebody that will write stuff like that. And so
You cracked the code.
He cracked the code.
that was
You
like
decoded.
4.5 years ago, I think.
That sounds about right.
And ever since then, Tim has told me what it was like when fire was discovered and when the wheel first came out. And
I made the first wheel, and I lit the first fire, don't you?
That's right.
Well, I have a question for you, Tim, while we're waiting on who was it that was going to ask you? Hallie?
Hallie.
Here's my question for you. Why do we park in driveways and drive on parkways?
Parkways.
Why do we drive
Why do
on park?
Why do the British call a parking lot a car park?
Well, that makes sense because you park your car there.
I get that.
But I don't know why I have no idea.
That's right. Tim, are you going to write a book ever?
I've been thinking about it.
I have a title for you. They called him Tim?
The Enchanter.
Tim the Enchanter.
Says the connections whisperer.
So, Hallie, do you want to write a book with Tim? That's the question. Because Tim needs a new apartment. And if you have a bedroom available.
Yeah.
It would be a good way to collaborate.
Yeah, I I am wise.
He is wise beyond his ears. So Hallie
Man,
says maybe.
you are
Hallie,
knocking him out, Gene.
Hallie is going to get to know Tim more. She's going to look at all of our Tuesdays with Tim in the past, and she's going to make her decision. Tim will go anywhere for a hamburger.
That's right. It has to be in and out, but I'll go anywhere.
That's right. And he will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Every
Oops,
day.
it's Tuesday.
I'll pay today. I got the money today.
He will pay today. The
Oh,
Church of
blow me
Corridor is
down.
writing his second book.
Come on, Hallie. What's your question? I'm waiting. I will
So
answer whatever you ask.
She's too shy to come on, and maybe she's formulating a question, but she did say if you have written a book yet. Have you ever thought about writing a book, Tim?
I was working on a book that now it got lost when I lost all my stuff. That I was
Oh,
working
so
on.
it was the lost manuscript that Joseph Smith found.
116
That's-
pages, I'll
That's
bet
how
you.
old you are.
It was, yeah. It was about 500
Oh.
pages.
Oh, no.
Hallie's a vegan, so it had to be a vegan burger. What do they call that?
Okay, Hallie.
Mystery meat at Burger King.
I don't know.
What do they call that? The new
The Mr. Oh,
Yes,
Impossible?
I'm retired.
Impossible
Hallie,
Burger.
Hallie, yes, I'm retired. What else do you want to know?
He's tired and retired. That's how.
Yes. Impossible. What's impossible?
I don't know,
the
but
Impossible
Peter,
Burgers is it's made out
Vegemite.
of Vegemite.
Peter, I tried Vegemite once. One time.
that's all it takes.
I don't know how you guys did it. What will happen in the millennium?
There you go.
Let me see. What will happen in the millennium?
Or what happened over the last millennium of Tim's life? That's what I want to know.
The millennium. We will travel further and further out into the universe.
Will we contact aliens?
Yes, we will contact aliens. Oh, Mormons eat the social kingdom when there is no meat. Each other. They'll eat each other.
No, they'll eat manna, i.e., Captain Crunch.
That's right. Captain Crunch in heaven.
Right.
I used
Captain
to say,
Crunch.
if there's no chocolate in heaven, I don't want to go. Don't want to be there.
So you're going to burn in hell, but you'll have plenty of chocolate.
I know Lisa says he's 6 months. Tim is 6 months younger than her hubby, and Tim's only 5 years older than me. But I know it looks like 20 years older. But it's just because I take care of myself compared to Tim.
That's
Well,
probably
Gene,
true.
you're way older than I am.
Not way.
Way.
1 week.
Like
One
how many
wait,
weeks?
wait of a week.
a week.
Aren't you
Yeah,
June 25th, right?
I am. Yeah.
So exactly, we are twins separated by 1 week and
1
about
week.
757 miles or something like that.
You're the 18th, right?
And I'm the 18th.
And Amanda's the 19th. Tim, when is your birthday?
August 22nd, 1954. Hi, Cassidy.
22nd. Well, we're all children of the 50s anyway.
It was a Sunday. It was Sunday at 10:30 in Santa Monica, California. And I was blue. My mother said she
A
wanted
blue
to send me
baby.
back. I was a blue baby.
That means you had to have like a transfusion.
I don't know.
I know what you
I
mean,
agree with
Hallie.
Hallie that Captain Crunch cuts up my
Cut your
tongue
mouth up.
sometimes. But Randy will say it's worth it. It's worth
It's worth it.
the
It's worth it.
sacrifice.
Bring on that Captain Crunch. Crunch berries, no crunch berries, I don't care.
10:35 in the morning.
That's right.
Mom missed church that day.
Let's get back to the question of the book. Tim, roughly what was the subject of your book going to be?
It was Brigham Young. I was editing his journals and his diaries, but George Smith finally did that.
Okay.
I was taking the manuscript history of Brigham Young and
George
annotating it
P.
with
Smith
his diary. Yeah.
of signature.
Yes. And I was Cassidy.
Was it all handwritten, Tim?
Not
Was
by
it
me.
handwritten or were you using a computer?
Scribe. He had a scribe named Oliver.
I had a typescript. I
And
had Xerox
8 witnesses.
I had Xerox copies of his diaries, and I had a typescript of the manuscript history, and I went up to Salt Lake and I compared it with the original and with all the notes and stuff, and it was a big project. And maybe it's on a hard drive, but I can't access the hard drive to finish it. Whether it be
That's
tricks in
horrible.
the celestial.
I think it'll be oatmeal. It'll kind of be oatmeal because of the TK smoothie kind of a thing. Maybe it'll just be smoothies for breakfast.
I've lost chapters before when writing, and it's horrible because I think the first effort is always the best, and then when you try to duplicate it, it just doesn't work out. So I'm sorry you lost that because that's a lot of work.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of work.
I agree. Tim should write the book of Tim.
I've been encouraged by Brother Smith has encouraged me to write. So maybe I'll sit down and write.
Yeah.
I need to.
How many journals do you have of your life?
None.
You didn't do a personal journal when you were in Germany?
No, I started one once and never went very far with it.
I started like 10. Dear journal, something happened to me today. And then like the rest of the pages are blank. And then I get another journal 5 years later.
I didn't do much. I wasn't much of a journal writer for my mission. The only thing that was in my missionary journal was my companions that I had and maybe a few anecdotes. But I was just enjoying it being in Germany. Hell, I was where I wanted to go all my life. I couldn't have asked for a better place to go on a mission. Beautiful. First year on my mission was so beautiful up at Detmold and Paderborn. It was green and gorgeous, and riding a bike, and yeah, you had doors slammed in your faces every day, but you know what?
Yeah.
I think Hallie has a point here.
What?
Did you see the screen?
No. Polly's you're still in get writing. Okay. All right.
That sounds like a good ending for a show, but
I have been working on something though.
Right now.
I can gauge my life by movies, and I have looked at the movies I watched, and when I watched them, I can remember a lot of things are tied to film in my lifetime and what happened.
And that would be a really effective way to do your chapters, the name of a film, and put that in the book, because that'll really intrigue people just to see the names of the films.
Yeah, like Mickey Rooney playing Huckleberry Finn was an important movie for me.
Yeah. Was that Mickey Rooney?
Yep.
Really? Thought it was. Huckle.
You thought it was Uncle Fester?
Huckleberry Finn.
And I remember the part where he's pretending to be a girl, and the woman throws something at him, and he closes his legs to catch it. And that made her know that he was a boy, because women with skirts open their legs to catch things on their dress.
Who played Tom Sawyer? Remember that one? Who was it that played Tom Sawyer? Tommy Kelly played Tom Sawyer. Okay. See, I remember
Jackie
those
Coogan
movies.
was going to be my other guess, but I'm pretty sure it's Mickey Rooney.
That's Kinder Kim. You know, Kinder Kim, I was laughing when you were talking about a mix of words being word vomit. And I
Yeah.
kept trying to chime in and give you a term because I liked it better than all of the others.
Yeah, it's more descriptive than word salad, for sure.
No, Joe. Mickey Rooney's best role was not in Breakfast at Tiffany's. That is so cringeworthy.
Was Mickey Rooney in A Star Is Born
I don't
with Judy?
think so.
That would be the original, right?
Actually, I think it was made before that. I think there was one before that. I think Babes in Arms was the first one with her. Now we're talking movies. Oh boy, that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down with me.
That's right. That's
I just, Tim, I
trying to
thought
go-
of you. We just watched the remake of West Side Story, and
Yes.
because my son Garrett, his best friend, plays Maria, and she's the same one
Really?
that's playing Snow White. Yeah, she's just unbelievable. She is such a talent.
I'm gonna go.
Rachel Zegler.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see that. Yeah, I saw that West Side Story, and I think
Mhm.
it's not as good as the 1960 version.
No,
It's a
but
little
did you
better.
see that? Did you see that Sophia Loren was in it? Wait, is it Sophia Loren that played the original Maria? Who was it?
No,
No.
Rita Moreno. Rita
Rita
Moreno
Moreno, yeah.
plays
I
the
always get
owner of the
those two
store.
mixed up.
She's
That's
the
right.
owner of the
Yeah.
store.
Just real quick, Joe's trying to come up with a fight with you. He's trying to pick a fight with you. He says Mickey Rooney's role in Breakfast at Tiffany's was a Nuremberg level crime.
That's true. That's true. I agree. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was a. Yes, there's a remake of West Side Story, Kim. That's pretty good. Not as good as the early one, but pretty good.
Yeah. It was like a modern day, I mean, both West Side Stories, I feel, were like a modern day Romeo and Juliet story.
Yeah,
You know,
I like them both. They both have their good points. You know. Yeah.
I have only heard the title of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Breakfast at Tiffany's reminds me that I wanted to start a shop called Hamburgers and Chandeliers. But who's going to clean the chandeliers up after all the grease gets? And I think I came up with that idea when Saturday Night Live had a skit about the economy was slow, and at the mall there was a tape store. They sold Scotch tape and masking tape and duct tape, and they had like tape for every need. Tapes, and all the store shopkeepers were talking to each other about how bad business was. And
I
so
thought you were going to say the Saturday Night Live skit about Sofa King. You know, that's where they get their sofas. They're Sofa King fast, They're so fucking thorough and so fucking cheap.
That's right. That's how they stay in business.
So I wanna name a store So Fucking.
So yeah, there's a noodle shop in Oakland, right? Vietnamese, and it's called Pho King. And I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it is fucking good, I'll say.
It's so fucking
So
good.
fucking good that we,
Fucking cheap.
yeah. And you get a fucking big bowl of it.
And it's so fucking good.
That's right. And we're not swearing, we're saying PHO. And we're also saying
Yeah.
SOFA, SOFA.
Like Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
SCHITTS. Right?
Another masterpiece, by the way. I love Schitt's Creek.
There you go.
Yeah.
Chandeliers and more. Joe's going to go into business with me. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. It's
Thank you.
March 25th still. It's
For a few
spring.
more hours.
Have a great rest of 2025. Don't let conference get you down. And like everybody says, ex-Mormons watch more conference than they ever did while they were